Good morning. My name is Richard Forrest, and let me introduce my co-host, Ingrid Maynard. Good morning, Ingrid.
Good morning, Richard. How are you?
Very well. How are you?
Yes, I'm well too. Thank you.
Welcome to our 8th, I think, B2B Sales Clinic. And we're talking today about how isolation is affecting sales and how to keep sales teams performing despite isolation and despite not being in the office to work together. It's a 30-minute webinar, so I'm just going to jump straight in, if I may, without the introductions that we normally have. Ingrid, can I start just by asking you, because with your experience and the people that you're meeting every day, ask you a couple of questions and let's kick this off.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've come back to work in 2022 after 2 years, more or less, of the pandemic. We've come back with much of January impacted by Omicron, forcing people everywhere to isolate. How do you see this impacting sales teams? How is it impacting sales teams right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a few ways that it's impacting sales teams. So, just as we thought, oh, look, everything's just opening up again, we're going to be able to build a bit more momentum. And the momentum that a lot of teams built towards the end of last year was, it was kind of, it comes to an abrupt halt again. And suddenly people can't meet or are afraid to meet. Suddenly people aren't back in the office. Suddenly, it's affecting resourcing. So there's all of those very real events that are happening. So when salespeople can't have planned meetings with either prospects or clients, that then affects their ability to progress opportunities to a degree. Of course, over the last couple of years, we've learned that phone and Zoom, like we're on today, are viable alternatives, but there are times when you simply do need a face-to-face meeting. So it's affecting that. That then has a flow-on effect to, forward pipeline as well as current pipeline, and of course sales results. So when there's uncertainty from our customers, it affects their ability to make decisions. They start to delay decisions, and then the sales that we would have realized this quarter then get pushed back into the next quarter. So while our sales teams are really, adept now at communicating and keeping customers and prospects connected to them, and maintaining a relevance, it has to affect, when sales are realized.
Yeah, and I think when we came to this point last year, I was thinking, okay, COVID's behind us, we're going to be fine. And of course, 6 months later, slammed the doors and back into lockdown again. So we're back at the same position potentially this year, and with so much hopefully now behind us, but still potential challenges ahead for sales leaders and their teams. What can we as sales leaders do? And even and ourselves, if we're salespeople, what can we do to help keep salespeople performing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in times where there's a lot of disruption, starting and stopping, when there's some uncertainty around, and when people are still not fully back into the office altogether, so you've got remote work teams, regardless of whether you're responsible for your own sales or whether you're responsible for a team and helping them achieve their sales, I think that structure really enables sales teams to lean on that structure so that they can focus on the right activity at the right time. So things like, in order to progress opportunities, so things like maintaining and maybe even changing up the format of your team pipeline meetings so that you've got people contributing to those meetings in a different way, that you've got collaboration on what we can do to progress opportunity that's sitting in the pipeline, where we need to focus and what activities are going to help us to convert what's in there. So I think there's that. I think the other thing too is for leaders to focus not just on final outcomes or lagging indicators, but to also really focus on some of those leading indicators, so activity driven stuff, how many phone calls have you made? How many meetings have you conducted? What's the outcome of those meetings? Have you, made sure that, those what was in the, dropping into the pipeline has now moved to a different stage. What you've been kind of nurturing, has that kind of gone to a ready to close stage? And of those ready to close people or opportunities, how are we working on getting to a position where we're ready to win those opportunities? So those sorts of structures I find really help to enable salespeople to not get distracted with shiny objects and to stay focused, which then helps them to feel like they're making progress. Progress equals happiness, and then they start to build their confidence back.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying there, and I think focusing on what people can do is one of the best things that you can do to help to motivate and manage a sales team. I guess the other big thing in the market right now is talent shortages and people moving jobs, and the news is talking about it's an employee or applicants market at the moment. Yes. So given the talent shortages that we're seeing right now, which are also exacerbated by isolation, is it possible, do you think, for leaders to expect their teams to hit their targets this year, especially in the first quarter? Do you think that they should be pushing for that, or do you think actually it's something they should be pushing that expectation back?
Yeah, I know it's you get obviously both sides of that contention from leaders and from salespeople who have sometimes very different opinions about what's possible. What I would offer is that I think that sales leaders have always got to have their feet on the accelerator, just pushing their sales teams to perform and to continue to perform. And the reality is, if they have set themselves up well towards the second half of last year, then there's no reason why they can't expect to hit those targets. I think that sales leaders' responsibility is to make sure that there's a little bit of a buffer in some of those targets each quarter, so that when anomalies like Omicron happen, that we don't throw everything out and we continue to have that focus, and that we're still going to realize, a really strong target and a really strong activity level. I think that the other reminder here is what we do today will impact us tomorrow. So we've got to be conscious that we can't take our feet off the pedal. So even though there might be challenges coming our way around timeframes, conversion rates, and also sales cycles, that as long as we're focused on the right activity, we're going to realize that. So the other thing that I think that sales leaders can do and must do is that they need to recruit now, not just for skills. They need to perhaps look more broadly at recruiting for the qualities that they want, that align with their organization, that align with their customer base, which align with their values, and also recruit for attitude, so that you've got people who are can-do, who are coachable, who are willing to get in there and take action, and willing to take direction. Because quite often in this type of market, like you said before, it's an applicant's market. You won't necessarily get people who come ready-made. So you've got to develop them, and you've got to develop them more than just that vertical skill set. It's got to be about capability building, so that they're continuing to grow. But that also means for sales leaders, they're going to have to spend a bit more time on building some of that capability. I think the other thing too is, I do have some clients that have kind of just assumed that we will be going back to normal, and so have left territories vacant, for waiting for the right person to come along to take that on, and have avoided redistributing customers within those territories because they don't want to have that stop-start. The problem with that is that unattended customers are ripe for competitors, And also, so that's a danger zone. And also there are other things that you can do. So even though we're in a talent shortage, you can think about your regions, you can think about your teams differently. So you've got inside salespeople. So maybe just redistribute those so that customers are still touched by people that, don't necessarily have the responsibility of going out to see them, but they're loved by the organization. And also just redistribute some of those opportunities out to your other field team members. After all, we've come from having, regions like a CBD. Well, what does that really mean now when people were working from home and our customers are often working from home? We need to think a little bit differently about how we distribute those regions so that, people are continuously touched and ignited and nurtured.
Yeah, I totally agree with your idea about what you said about don't look for the complete person, but go and find somebody you can mold and grow. Yes. Because I think it's too easy to go, I'm looking for an experienced salesperson. Yeah. But an experienced salesperson only gets experience by doing the work. And actually, if you bring on somebody younger with less experience, but with the right attributes, yes, qualities, you can grow your own salesperson and probably far more effectively and give them something of a career there.
Do you know, it's interesting, Richard, one of my clients has done just that, and their most successful salesperson is the one person who comes with absolutely no prior experience. So, that kind of speaks to that point there.
Probably hungry.
Yeah, very, very, and willing to learn. Yeah. So when we think about this time, what are some of the things that you believe that, we can do to keep our sales team engaged and hitting their numbers?
Yeah, I'm very much, I kind of overlap with you. I'm very much a numbers person, and I don't believe in making sales. I don't think you can make somebody buy something. What you need to do is do all the components that lead up to that well, and frequently enough that you make consistent sales. So I'm a really big believer of giving people, salespeople, their numbers, and making sure that they know where they are with these at all times.
Yes.
Now, I'm going to have to say apologies for a second because my screen has just gone blank for some
reason. Oh, no.
I'm not entirely sure why.
I can still see you.
You can still see me, great.
Yeah,
So the numbers that are important to me, and not necessarily the numbers that sit in the CRM where you've got where each prospect is in the funnel. I think those are important, but I like to simplify things to make it really easy for me to understand, and also for salespeople to understand. So I'll give you an example of the numbers within FMG. I have 3 numbers. They're all really easy to track, and I can get them from our CRM. So the first is number of leads that we've received. So how many leads have come in from whatever channel have come in a week, in a month. The next stage for me is how many proposals have we issued, or deals have we created? Because if somebody comes in looking for a service and we don't provide it, they're a lead, but we can't sell to them. So they're actually not a relevant prospect. But the number of proposals that we issue indicates the number of quality leads that we've got there. So that's my second metric, is how many proposals do we issue? And then the third one is quite simple. How many sales have we made?
Yes.
And by using those numbers, I can look at how our sales funnel is working. Have we got the same number of leads each week as we would expect? Are we issuing the same number of proposals as a percentage of those leads each week? And are we closing as many of those sales each week, each month, as we would expect to? And it also gives the sales team numbers to work to. So I can reverse engineer those numbers knowing our metrics. So I know that over last year, our conversion from lead to sale was 9%.
Yeah,
9% of those leads came in, or we generated, turned into sales. Yes. So if I want us to make 10 sales per month, I know that we need to take 10 divided by 9%, which is 110 leads. We need 110 leads per month. Now, if I know that we're going to receive 100 leads a month from inbound,
Yep.
I know that from outbound or networking, we have to create another 10 leads, and those numbers will fall through. Now,
Yes.
will they always be 9%? Oh, it will vary month to month. But I can sit down with our sales team and say to them, these are the numbers we need to hit. This is where we are. This is where you are. And they know where they are. They don't have to report on, is somebody interested in our proposal and things like that. That's what the CRM captures.
Yes.
But it's not the metrics that I use to focus our team on.
Yes.
So for me, it's really important to be able to manage the team through the numbers, and then to set them some stretch goals through the numbers. There's a really good stretch goal process that I take people through. It's a bit too hard to go through on this webinar, but if anybody wants to get information on that, I'm very happy to share it with them.
Yes.
After the webinar.
Mm.
But yeah, I'm a big fan on numbers, managing by numbers, giving the sales team numbers that they can control. So if I said, look, we have to get 10 leads that aren't going to come through inbound inquiries from the website, that's something they can go out and do and say, okay, well, I've got to find 2 leads a week or 2.5 leads a week between the sales team that are coming from their network or from outbound cold calling to prospect. And that's something they can put into, that's in their control. We feed the numbers in, it's going to yield the numbers that we need down the track. So that's probably the thing I would do, especially with remote working staff, is to be able to communicate those simple numbers and give them control over them and say, well, look, if you want to make this number of sales, you need to have this number of deals or proposals. And if you've got to get that number of deals or proposals, you need to be talking to this number of new prospects every month. And it's something they can go, well, am I on target? Actually, I'm ahead of the target. I can set myself some goals to exceed my budget. Or you can see as a sales leader where they are with their performance. It's very easy to get those numbers.
Yeah, and with those numbers too, Richard, like, so you've got those 3 key metrics that you talk about: number of leads, proposals issued, and sales. With each of those 2, that's not only going to tell you, you know, where your level of effectiveness is, but also as a sales leader to identify, you know, the parts in the process, you know, that illuminate places to coach. Yeah,
that's exactly right. You can see across the team how it's going, and are the numbers still consistent? And you can see by individual how people are performing. You go, well, I've got somebody who converts 11%, and I've got somebody who converts 7%. I need to work on the 7%.
That's right.
Go back. You're absolutely right. So it's a really good way to be able to manage and coach people. And coming back to your point about hiring new salespeople, that's a great way to bring them on. You can say, this is what you need to do as a process, and then you can manage them to that.
Yeah, that's right. Modeling excellence from within the team. So what else is happening that's, you know, affected by isolation?
I think it's, as you talked about, which is the recruitment side. I think I'm hearing a lot from sales leaders that they're finding they're struggling to hire salespeople. And we were talking before this webinar about how you need to, in today's age, you need to shorten your sales recruitment process, because if you take 3 weeks to make a decision about somebody, chances are they've gone elsewhere. You really need to shorten that process. I think perhaps look outside of what is your normal recruitment person, the type of person you would hire, and recruit slightly differently. And remembering that one of my great adages is that nothing in business happens until a sale is made. So if you don't have a salesperson or you don't have a sales team, then the whole company is going to falter, and it's going to fall. You have to be able to make sales. So recruiting and onboarding of salespeople is absolutely vital today. So I think you mentioned it about shortening the recruitment process is very, very important. Hiring people that maybe you wouldn't have considered before. And it goes back to that definition of insanity, which is doing the same thing over and over again, and expecting a different outcome. So if your recruitment process isn't working, think about how you could change it. Now, this may or may not be relevant, but in January, when we're recruiting agents for our team, we had 1,100 we had 1,100, we had 1,600 applicants to our jobs. To
1,600,
which is a huge number. And it's also a huge number to have to deal with. Now, we've got a very streamlined and robust recruitment process, so we don't have to talk to those people. We take them through a process over a number of days that they can complete the number of steps that they need to do. And it came down to, I think we had 32 applicants that we could hire, and we hired 16 of those.
wow.
So if you go after people who are exactly the people you would have looked at before COVID and lockdown, you probably wouldn't get that number. We've changed how we're looking. We're looking for people anywhere in the country, so it's opened up big markets for us, and we've changed the hours that we'll let people work so it fits with their lifestyle. So I think that's one of the big things.
Yeah.
The other, though, and I think probably most importantly, is how you onboard your new salespeople.
Yeah.
Given that they're likely to be working remotely, at least for part of the time.
Yeah.
It's very hard to onboard somebody successfully in the way that we did pre-COVID. And if you think back to taking a role as a new salesperson, new kid on the block, it's not easy to pick up all the things you need to know. Yeah. So I'm a big fan of a robust onboarding plan where the salesperson is introduced to all of the key people within the departments in the organization, from manufacturing, from logistics, from sales, from marketing, from finance to HR. All of those people are introduced to, all of those departments are introduced to the new salesperson. Doesn't necessarily need to be the head of department every time, but needs to be somebody that they can go to if they've got a question in that department and get an answer, and allow them to build those networks.
Yes,
I think the other thing is that onboarding isn't something that you can really complete now in a week. I think it has to take a number of weeks, and to go back to make sure that that salesperson is getting the coaching they need, the product awareness that they need. Yeah. I would also suggest that they get a mentor probably within the sales team, somebody they can go to who's going to guide them and who is not going to be sitting and thinking, well, I don't want them hitting their targets because it will make me look bad, and therefore holding that person back, but somebody who's got the best interest of that person, that new salesperson at heart, and is going to help them grow, fit into the organization, learn and understand how the sales process works. And then coming back to what I mentioned earlier, is giving the numbers to that person and letting them know what they need to achieve, and holding them accountable and tracking those numbers with them every single month, so they can see how that happens. Because if you onboard somebody and you do it well, you reduce your staff turnover. And I'm guessing that actually the best practice of onboarding is going to have an overflow effect into your existing sales team, and you'll start coaching and training them in a different way too. All salespeople have to get used to selling remotely. Yeah. And salespeople are gregarious. They like to be out meeting people and sitting down in front of those people and talking to them. Talking on Zoom is not something that's going to come naturally for them. So there is an element of retraining there. But I think the other thing is, as we go, and hopefully as mask mandates reduce, I think getting salespeople out to sales calls and face-to-face with prospects is a great thing, and getting them back into the office for maybe 2 or 3 days a week, ideally is another great thing to be aiming for.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, look, you've mentioned so many really important there. One of the things that I just thought that was very strong was about your onboarding process, about making sure that that new salesperson has the opportunity to build insight and networks across the organization, so that they understand more broadly what the organization is able to do and not do. When we talked about supply chain issues, being one of those challenges that salespeople have to navigate. They have to manage expectations with customers, and having that internal insight that you talked about, warehousing, logistics, transport. When that new person understands the process from go to woe, then they're far better placed to have good conversations that they're having with prospects and clients about you know, what we can do, what we can't do, so that, you know, everyone's on
Yeah.
the same page.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think so. And I think it's going to be, is it going to be an easy year? No, it's not. I think we do need to think about things differently. I think we need to be more closely aligned as sales leaders with our sales teams, and giving them feedback on how they're going. I loved your answer about hitting targets. You know, I don't think that businesses can afford to push back targets much further. I know we've had that discussion before too. So getting people to that, if you can't move the target back, you've got to move the salespeople's activity and performance up to the right level. If it's not, and the way to do that is always through activity, because if you get twice as many leads coming through, so long as the quality doesn't change, your sales at the end of the day are going to double. And if the quality does change, then okay, it won't be double, but it will still be an increase on what you're getting now. So managing those numbers is really, really crucial, I think, at this point.
Yeah, 100% agree. 100% agree with that.
And I think are we almost out of time?
We're almost out of, I thought we might have 3 minutes left for questions.
Some questions, good idea.
Yeah.
Can I ask you to run this, because I've got a blank screen in front of me. I can't do anything, so I'll need to rely on you.
No, absolutely. So just, you know, putting the call out to any participants who, you know, have a burning question that they'd love, you know, to hear a response from either of us or from both of us. Please feel free to put that into the chat or raise your hand, and you know, and we'll be able to see that, I think. Let me just make sure I've got all of the attendees here. Yep. Okay. So, Trevor King, hello. I just noticed that you were there. Okay. Well, not so far, but what I am going to say here is just that other point that you made, Richard, about, you know, that buddy system or that mentor system. Oh, here we go. Hang on. I just want to go to the participants. What do you suggest for new sales staff, you know, internal training or external training, or both?
It's a really interesting question. Do you mind if I jump in and
jump in?
I think it depends on who you're recruiting and the type of sale they're making and the value of the sale. I think if the value of the sale is high, then external is also really good. But I was talking to Owen Richards, who's my business partner in the UK, the other day, and saying, you know, we need to back ourselves as a sales organization to be able to onboard and train really good people and bring them in from scratch. And I think that's true of most sales teams in all organizations. But I think that external training is really good. It needs to be delivered well, because you go to a course and it lasts a day or 3 days and you come back and you forget it. So I'm much more a fan of ongoing mentoring or coaching, sales coaching, as opposed to sales training courses. But it comes from both internal and external.
Yep.
How about you, Ingrid? What do you think?
Oh, well, you know, I guess this is my space. So I think that there's value in having someone external, because they see things with a fresh perspective. So there's that. But you're absolutely right. You know, what happens, you know, after that workshop, of course, you know, a lot of the programs that I run are, you know, 12-month programs. So there's that ongoing piece. But unless there's internal champions, you know, implementing, driving, supporting, championing the program and the key elements of that, then, you know, that kind of learning, you know, is a little bit more shallow. So I think you kind of need both.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that if you take just an internal focus, you become myopic. And taking that external training allows you to expand that and probably allow your sales team to see some of the challenges that they've got in a different way. And to have an external person come in with a new frame will show them how to solve some of those problems. I don't think you get that just purely from internal. So I absolutely agree with you. I think it's got to be both.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff.
My screen has come back on, so I'm and to see everybody, which is great. So I think it's 9:30. So I think we should wrap it up on time. Ingrid, it's always great to see you and to work with you, and I love collaborating. And I know we're going to get a chance to have a coffee in person next week. Amazing.
Oh,
first time in several years.
Can't wait. Absolutely. You're welcome, Joanne.
And, I'd like to thank everybody for attending. We will be running another one, I think, in about 2 months' time. We'll be sending out the recording of this, the video of this webinar today in the next few days. If you do have any questions afterwards, please get in touch with either Ingrid or myself. Ingrid's email from memory is ingrid@thesalesdr.com.au. Is that right?
Spot on.
And mine is richard@fmgroup.com.au. Happy to talk to anybody afterwards. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Ingrid, lovely to see you again, and look forward to seeing you next week.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too.
Okay, all the best. Bye-bye.
Bye.